Welcome to GeoScope, where we map the forces reshaping trade, tech, and power. Today we're tracking a quiet revolution in the grain market, how U.S. wheat lost its crown, and how Canada turned a canola crisis into a global wheat empire. For over half a century, American wheat was the global benchmark. From the sprawling fields of Kansas and North Dakota, a river of grain flowed to the world, the legacy of an agricultural system perfected to feed a growing planet. Bakers from Manila to Marseille built their businesses on its consistent quality and predictable supply. The U.S. wasn't just a supplier, it was the world's breadbasket. But by 2025, the foundations of that empire began to crack. The shift wasn't a sudden collapse, but a quiet drift. Long-standing contracts, some spanning decades, were being rerouted north to Canada or across the Pacific to Australia. On the surface, prices for U.S. wheat held steady, masking the underlying crisis of confidence. Buyers were walking away, but not over price. The reason was a far more fragile commodity: confidence. In a world of just-in-time supply chains, predictability is king. The question was no longer just how much does it cost, but can I be certain it will arrive when you say it will? The hidden costs of uncertainty were becoming too high. That erosion of confidence was fueled by a cascade of domestic failures. Aging rail lines caused unpredictable freight delays. A patchwork of shifting regulations created a compliance minefield. It all culminated at the ports, where unprecedented backlogs left ships idling for weeks. For an international buyer, the American supply chain no longer felt dependable. It felt fundamentally risky. The consequences were stark. In the Philippines, San Miguel Foods, a client for decades, abandoned a massive 110,000-ton renewal. The business was decisively reallocated to Canada's Viterra and Australia's CBH. They weren't just offering grain, they were offering certainty, backed by modernized logistics and transparent tracking, a guarantee the US could no longer make. The problem was even more acute in Europe. As the EU rolled out its new carbon tracking system, the technological gap became a chasm. US shipments reliant on paper documents struggled to prove compliance. Meanwhile, Canada had future-proofed its exports. Their grain came with a digital passport, a simple QR code containing verifiable data on its journey and carbon footprint. Canadian wheat passed every test. Herein lies the paradox. In laboratories, American grain remained world-class, scoring high on protein and bake quality. But the market no longer judged the grain in isolation, it judged the entire system. America's logistical infrastructure lagged behind a world demanding speed and transparency. The quality of the wheat was undeniable, but its journey to the customer had become its fatal flaw. For decades, American agriculture built its reputation on reliability. But in the 21st century, a new definition of trust began to emerge. It wasn't just about logistics, it was about what was the grain. This seismic shift in global expectations exposed a critical vulnerability in the American heartland, one that competitors were already poised to exploit. The first tremor hit when South Korea, responding to consumer pressure, tightened its limit for the herbicide glyphosate to just 30 parts per billion. For American producers of hard red winter wheat, this was a catastrophe. Their grain, which often tested above 200, was suddenly non-compliant. The result was chaos at the ports. Cargoes were rejected, ships idled for weeks, and a wave of uncertainty scared away loyal buyers who couldn't afford the delays. While the U.S. scrambled, Canada was executing a long-planned strategy. Anticipating the global trend, their government and agricultural associations had invested heavily in clean farm programs. They incentivized a transition to precision agriculture, using advanced drones for hyper-targeted spraying that minimized chemical contact with the grain. This created a product they could market as verifiably cleaner and safer, perfectly tailored for the new, discerning global consumer. The market shift was swift and brutal. By mid-2025, Canadian wheat, now certified and trusted, had captured 62% of South Korea's import market. For the United States, the cost was immense, over $400 million in lost sales. But the damage went deeper. For family farms across Kansas and Oklahoma, it was a devastating blow. The ripple effect cost thousands of jobs across the plains, hollowing out communities built on the promise of global trade. The South Korean crisis was more than a lost contract, it was a paradigm shift made plain. Food safety and chemical transparency had become powerful new weapons in international trade. Canada hadn't just sold more wheat, they had leveraged data and trust to seize the inside lane. For the US, it was a harsh lesson. In this new global game, it was no longer enough to be the biggest producer. you had to be the most trusted. South of the US, another problem: border choke points. New customs scans and paperwork in 2025 turned wheat trucks into parking lots at Laredo and Mesa. Mexican millers couldn't risk delays. Canada seized the moment, launching a through-rail corridor from Vancouver to Baja that bypassed inspections entirely. Its share of Mexico's imports rose to 38%, while the US sank to 17%. Silos in Kansas filled up, prices slid below break-even, and analysts warned that once buyers switch, only 15% return within 5 years. Canada's success wasn't just luck, it was strategy. After tariffs battered its canola sector, Ottawa poured nearly $1 billion into a protein supercluster, funding traceability tech and high-yield wheat varieties. Fields once planted with canola were soon producing record spring wheat harvests, with every shipment backed by real-time data on protein, moisture, and residues. Even Australia copied the model, while US exporters still relied on emailed PDFs. A July 2025 merger between Bunge and Viterra gave Canada a foothold in Asia and Europe, cementing its reputation as the high-tech grain supplier. Alarmed by shrinking market share, Washington launched the Strategic Grain Reliability Act in early 2025, IoT sensors for silos, digital export certificates, and risk guarantees for overseas buyers. But budget fights and partisan gridlock slowed the rollout. Meanwhile, U.S. wheat's global share slid to 10.5%, even as export volumes briefly spiked. Officials are eyeing India and Nigeria for growth, but protectionism and poor infrastructure make them tough wins. Canada, meanwhile, keeps locking in the contracts that once went to American farms. This story isn't just about harvests. It's about whether American agriculture can modernize fast enough to compete in the 21st century. The challenge is no longer simply producing more. It's about producing smarter, with greater transparency and precision. In a world grappling with food security and climate volatility, the ability to adapt isn't just an advantage, it's a matter of survival for a nation's agricultural leadership. While the US leaned on its legacy of sheer volume, Canada built a data-driven machine buyers trust. They invested in a national system for real-time monitoring and quality analysis, from the farm gate to the cargo ship. This provides international buyers with unparalleled consistency and reliability, a level of trust the more fragmented US system is now struggling to match. If reforms stall, America risks not just losing market share but losing relevance in a sector it once defined. The danger is becoming a supplier of last resort, selling on price alone, while premium markets flock to competitors who guarantee quality and traceability. This would mean ceding influence in global food policy and weakening a cornerstone of its economic power. The path forward requires a monumental effort: sweeping policy reforms and massive investment in digital infrastructure. Can the US rebuild confidence and out-innovate its rivals? The answer lies in harnessing its own formidable strengths: a deep well of agricultural expertise and a vibrant tech sector. This isn't about copying Canada, but about creating a uniquely American system for the digital age, transforming its agricultural might into a precision tool of value and trust. Or is Canada's rise the new normal, born of tech, timing, and trade shocks? While the US was embroiled in trade disputes, Canada positioned itself as a stable, reliable partner. They leveraged technology not as an add-on, but as the core of their strategy, perfectly timed to meet a global market that now prizes data as much as grain. The future of agricultural dominance is being written right now. What do you believe is the single most important step the US must take? Share your analysis in the comments. Like, subscribe, and stay tuned to GeoScope for more insights on how markets, policy, and technology are reshaping our world.